Hey, thanks for joining me on OTS Live. Today, as usual, we always have special guests. Today, we have a very special guest, someone who uh, I know has a knowledge of developing players, playing the game, as well as in being in charge of academies, uh, coaching at the highest level. And today we're going to draw on him to give us all the knowledge that he has about youth development and his pathway, his development pathway, how he got to where he was, what's the difference in certain areas of the game. So I'm definitely looking forward to it. So today we're going to be speaking to Chris Ramsey, the technical director and head of coaching with QPR, Queen's Park Rangers. I will allow him to tell you his journey, and I want you to look at the picture, especially the picture, and see what he's holding in his hands. We're going to talk about that also. And should be a very interesting hour and a half or 20 minutes. We're going to draw on him for as long as we can and ensure that we get all the information to help you as coaches and help me myself to understand what happens in the world of football in the UK. And we're going to be saying, we're going to welcome Chris. Hi, Chris. Good to see you, man.
How you doing? Good to see you.
I'm great. Glad you could be here. You heard my rambling about how good you are and what you have been doing. So I'm going to let you do the same. But we're going to start out by just telling something about yourself, Chris. Where you start, how you started. No rush. We want to hear everything about you.
Well, obviously, I started way back in 1978 as a player. Started as an apprentice with Bristol City a long time ago when they were in the Premier League back in the first division. And I moved from there to Brighton, where I became a first team player. I was there for 5 years. Managed to play in the FA Cup final against Manchester United for them. Played in the Premier League, old first division for them. Then I moved to Swindon, gained 2 promotions there with them. And then I moved to Southend, where I sustained some injuries and firstly retired at the age of 28, but I ended up going out to Malta as the player manager of a team called National Alliance. It was there that I started coaching, actually. Really taking on coaching in a serious guise, so to speak. Left Malta, came back to England, went to university. While I was at university, I was the head of player development at Leyton Orient, where I got headhunted by the FA to go and work there. But during that time as well, I also coached a women's team for 3 years. So I did a lot of development regarding learning how to coach different people, different genders, different age groups. And then obviously I got headhunted by the FA. Went there to be Howard Wilkinson's assistant with the England under-18s and the regional director for London and the South East, which was a very steep learning curve as regards learning the coach education, about recruitment, lots of facets that went with being the regional director for the whole of the South East. So fortunately for me, I had a great friend. Well, I've got a great friend called Ricky Hill, and before I actually went back to university and came back to London, I was working with him in Cocoa Beach in Florida, and I was sort of a player assistant coach with him at Cocoa Beach, and then he left. Then the next summer, I went out there and I was actually the player coach for them at that time. So I learned a lot about the American system and the way that things work. So having said that, when I left the FA, when Ricky asked me to come and be his assistant at Luton Town, which was in those days they were a League One team. So they'd just been relegated from the Championship. So we did that, and as you know, it was, regarding being a manager, when you get into the first team elements, it's cruel. it's a lot crueler than working in the youth system. You know, you lose 2 or 3 games and you could be out of a job.
Yes.
So that was short lived. That was maybe 4 months that lasted. So you know, I ended up leaving there. And I took a little bit of a break for a little while. I went back to school teaching just to get my head together. But I ended up being an agent for a year with a company called Key Sports, which was one of the biggest companies at that time, dealing with some big players, which I hated. I hated the job. I hated being an agent. It was. I found it very difficult. And although there are some ethical agents, I found it a very unethical industry. And then I went from there. I started moonlighting at Barnet with just to keep my hand in, and that was, I learned a lot there, because when you're working with the England players, you know, the likes of Steve Gerrard and Ashley Cole and people like that back in those days, and then you leave and start working with players that would be deemed to be, you know, I would say less polished. It's a massive culture shock for you. Dealing with that. I learned a lot more about football, the whole workings of football once I started working at Luton and Brighton, not Brighton, Luton and Barnet, because that's the real coalface there. But fortunately for me, you know, I had some contacts in America, and I was, you know, working out in New Orleans, and I got a call from my friend Pat Dix. He was in charge of the football complex at Disney, and his dad was the manager of Charleston Battery. And I'd worked at Disney, funny enough, before for Pat during the summers, you know, the camps and that. And I knew him from when he was a kid. He called me and told me that Charleston needed a manager because his dad was retiring. And I went out there. I flew out there, had the interview, and you know, I was successful in the interview. Came back to England. They phoned me and said you've been successful in the job. So I moved to America. So I spent 4 years in America, 3 at Charleston Battery and 1 at Florida Premier, where I was director of coaching for the men's element of the club, and assistant director for the women's. So there was a lot of learning of different ways of actually managing initiatives, which helped me really to push on when I came back to England. Because when I came back to England, John McDermott, who I knew from working at the FA before, phoned me and asked me to come to Tottenham as the assistant academy manager. So obviously, I was away from my child at the time, who was here. I was going backwards and forwards and seeing him, and he was coming out with his mum. So that was very, very difficult. So I jumped at the chance to come back to England as the assistant academy director at Tottenham. Tottenham, where I spent a decade. So you know, at Tottenham, I had 5 years working with the U9s to 16s and assisting the under 18s coach at Singleton, who's a great developer as well himself. He's at Liverpool. And then Les Ferdinand came to the club. You know, Les came thinking, I don't know, 2008, roughly around about that. Anyway, he was working with Harry Redknapp with the first team, with Tim Sherman. They're 2 legends of the club. And but at that stage, I wouldn't say I'd had enough of working with the U9 to 16, but you know, I think it sort of ran its course, that element of my coaching career. It sort of ran its course at that time. And you know, I was about to leave on a couple of occasions, and Les persuaded me not to. And then what happened was then is they took over the development squad, we called it then. It was the reserves, and they persuaded the academy manager to allow me to take that job, which, you know, I'm always very, very thankful for the conversations that Les had with me, and Tim Sherwood had faith in me to take me to there, because the development squad there at that time, you know, you had Carl Walker, Carl Norton, Stephen Coulter, Jake Livermore, Ryan Mason, who's the manager now of the club, Danny Rose, Andros Townsend. You had the likes of those people in it. I mean, our first development squad, I think Harry Kane was sub with Adam Smith and people like that.
That's more than a development squad, eh?
It was a fantastic development squad that we had, and and one of the catalysts really for what happened at Tottenham was regards all those players getting to the next level was the fact that Tim Sherwood and Les took the job, and obviously brought me as the first team coach into it. So I was able to really inform them about the players that from the academy, because I'd worked with them for 5 years before. So a lot of the players that got up from the academy. Obviously, there were one or two that were brought from other clubs like Danny Rose, Carl Norton, and Carl Walker, but the majority of them had come through the club's academy, which I had quite a strong knowledge of, because along with John McDermott, I'd helped set the syllabus for the development of the players. So that worked outstandingly well for the club and saved the club a lot of money. Because we were playing players that were cost the club nothing ahead of players that cost the club millions.
Yes.
But
yes.
as you know, as I said, first team football was cruel. So we missed out on the Champions League qualification by, I don't know, 1 point, I think, or 2 points. And when you're at Tottenham, that's that 1 or 2 points costs you your job.
Yeah, but I want to. That's a good. I mean, that background. I mean, it's hard to touch. I'm going to come back to Les Ferdinand later on. I know you have a special relationship with Les, but I want to go back to. I want to stay with Tottenham. I know you're there for a decade. What was your role in Tottenham?
Well, as the assistant academy manager, we're basically assisting the academy manager, but I was mainly setting the syllabus for the coaching and a lot of the times doing the coaching. So, I was a lot fitter and energetic than I am now. But because I can actually coach the players, 9s to any age group, really, in order to set a philosophy, you have to have compliant coaches. So if we had to get rid of a lot of coaches that were there because they weren't prepared to buy into the philosophy, and because obviously I can physically do it myself. If someone didn't want to do it, then I would physically take the sessions myself.
Okay.
And then the people that complied, we kept.
I want sticking there now, because I have a lot of coaches that are listening, and they are coaching at the youth level also. Some may be at the 9-year-old level, some may be at 12, 13, 14. But I think development, in a sense, basically follows the same pathway. But you talk about age specific, it makes it a little different. But give me an area. I know it's a different culture, but I think football is international. Development, you hear the same terminologies. I think it's how you apply them. In your experience, Chris, what are some of the areas that you think that the coaches that are developing players should focus on?
Well, first and foremost, if you're developing a player at QPR, we work on a strength-based capability program. So you don't really sign players for what they can't do. So you sign for what they're good at. So it's important that whatever they're good at, you make that a super strength. And we actually don't work on weaknesses unless it affects their development. So for argument's sake, if you are a centre half and you can't head it, and it's a weakness, you're not going to be a centre half. You could be good at everything else, but if you can't head it, you're not going to be one. So that's something that's going to stop you doing the job. So if you're a winger and you can dribble but you can't cross, that's going to stop you doing your job. So then we would have to work on it. But we don't really, initially, we don't work on things unless it's going to stop people. So a lot of the times you have people tracking back when they're, encouraging people that 10 years old to track back and stuff like that. And we're saying that that's not going to get them a contract. What they do on the ball at those ages is going to get them a contract. Now, as they get older and things become more tactical, then the other elements come into the game. The other tactical areas come into the game. But I think people teach tactics before they teach technique. And if you haven't got good technique, it doesn't matter how good you are at tactics.
Right.
Doesn't really matter. You know.
It is important. I love that approach because a lot of people will say, "Hey, you're a center half. We're going to work on your weaknesses, and we'll spend time on heading heading is one of the critical areas, I imagine, you know." And if I agree with that, I agree with you. Definitely agree with you. And I see you. I think some people see from a different perspective. No, because we do try to teach them and concentrate on their weaknesses. And I like what you're saying. Maybe they're not a center back. You know, maybe they should be playing on the wing someplace, or someplace where they don't need to use their head. And I think we can do it at the highest level, though. What do you think about them? Okay, for instance, you might have a kid. Why I'm saying this, Chris, is that we have a lot of coaches because the boy is 6 foot. He should be a center back. He should never be a midfielder. They're just throwing back there. Either that or a goalkeeper. one of the two. You know. So I like that approach. Are there any other areas that you have come across that you think that as coaches we could pay attention to outside of not working on the weaknesses? Is there any other thing that you came across that was prevalent in the whole in the development of youth players?
Yeah, I think one of the things, we have a thing called a CCF, which is a coaching competence framework, which the Premier League want everyone to do. And when we're looking at we set our own. The first thing we set on is the connection. If there is no connection, you can't coach anybody. It doesn't matter how much you know. So the first thing we look at is what age-appropriate coaches we have that can connect with the players at the different ages. Because without you not knowing a lot and connecting with the players and teaching them what you know, than knowing a lot and not being able to connect with the players. Now, there's different ways you can connect. So if you look at it at the top level, where there could be a connection through fear, but we know that connection won't last. So people have short-term gains with that. So what we try and do is make sure whatever happens, that coach has the appropriate level of connection with the player, and that's the first and the group. So that's the first thing that we look at, and then everything after that we look at. Right, first things first with a player. There's 4 areas that we look at: what's essential, what's important, non-essential, and what's desirable. So it is pointless, for argument's sake, someone who's the essential things they have to be very good at, the important things they have to be good at, the important non-essential, they can be average at that, because it's not going to be the difference between getting a contract or not. And the desirable, it doesn't matter whether they're good or bad at that. So for argument's sake, if we're working on a midfield player, we're saying, I don't know, free kicks for us is desirable until they get to the top level and they need it, but it's desirable. We're talking about their passing and competing will be in the essentials and important. Those 2 things, if they're not good at that, having the technique to lead the attack or stop the attack, whatever it is, they need that. Otherwise, they're not going to play in those positions. And then we look at the important non-essentials. Could be anything from I don't know, getting in the box to score, or helping out the defence. But we first of all look at, in development, what is going to actually get them over the line to get a contract. So for argument's sake, we call it Basildon to Barcelona. So if you play for Basildon or Barcelona, if you're centre half, you have to tackle. You have to be good at 1v1 defending, no matter where you are. So the job description doesn't change. What does change, though, is how good you are at it, and then the important non-essential. So if we go back to being a centre half, if you play for Barcelona or you play for Arsenal or one of the top 6 teams, you're going to have to run into midfield with the ball as a half and join the play. That's the level that people are going to look at you at. Now, if you play for Barnet, you better be good at being a good defender. No one's going to expect you to be spraying the ball from right to left.
Right.
But it allows you to get a contract. It allows you to have a career in the game. So we look at those 4 areas, and we look at a lot of people work on what's undesirable. So for argument's sake, we don't do our centre halves we don't do shooting with centre halves.
Right.
When do they ever do it?
Yes.
They never do it. So
yes.
Why not work on something that they're going to work on, like interceptions or 1v1 defending? So I see these sessions where the centre halves are out wide crossing it. And I'm saying, in now and again for a bit of fun, fine. But as you get to the level where you actually want to become a pro, why would you do that? Because that's not going to be the difference between you getting a career or not. It's not going to do that. So sometimes I see people working on, a short winger clearing the ball at the far post. Why?
Yeah.
Why? He's not that isn't going to be the difference between them getting a contract or not. Now, obviously, when they come into a team where they are expected to do certain tactical things for that coach, then work on it by all means. But not all the essential things are the things that you need to work on first. And too many people work on these global things that don't help the player. Now, obviously, at the bottom of the pyramid, yes, like a school, you go to primary school, you work on everything, don't you? You have science, geography, history, in one day.
Yes.
As you get into the secondary school, you start picking your options, and you work on 2 or 3 things. And then when you go to university, you're really working on one thing, aren't you?
Yeah.
Or you're homing in on one thing.
No elective. I tell you something. I like that thought process because it's opening my eyes and it opening a lot of people's eyes because so my question to you is that the academies, Tottenham, QPR, all the academies, they not just look at developing players for their next level teams. They are looking to maybe develop players that they can get a contract, they can make some funds from it also. That's what you're saying, Chris, right? It's not all about developing players for their
not everybody. No, not everybody. It depends on your ethos of your academy. So some academies are not like that. Some academies just want to win the game.
Okay.
Some academies will beat you. When I was at Tottenham, we played Barnsley, I think, in the Youth Cup, and all the big hitters that they were playing. Tottenham haven't won a Youth Cup forever. But what you have to look at is how many players from their youth teams have ended up with careers and big level things. So people used to say, "Oh, no Tottenham team should lose to Barnsley." Why? They might have a better youth team than you at the time.
Right.
But you're not the first team. You're not the first team. What you are is a vehicle for the club to earn revenue, which is getting you to a level where you can play in the team, save that money, and then eventually be sold. And that is what the youth team's about. Too many people think the youth team is. Listen, nobody wants to lose. Nobody goes out and says, "Oh, how many can we lose by?" But a lot of the times, people in youth level think that that's the be all and end all, and it's not the be all and end all. It's about where players end up.
Right. I think if anyone else can speak about youth development, it's you, because you have stated before that you have been the development coach at these in charge of the academies. You can go from 9-year-olds. I know you went to senior because you were a Premier League coach for QPR at one point, and so I know you span the entire age brackets. Now, there is a terminology here you use, and I think it falls within the whole thing. And this is zone of proximal development. I want you, Chris Ramsey, to tell me what this means.
Well, within our context, it was developed by a philosopher called Versatility. And I learned this really when I did my teaching teaching my Bachelor of Education, my first degree, and it's basically looking at where people are on the continuum of development. So, for argument's sake, I just break it down quite so that it's clear. For argument's sake, if you're looking at somebody who goes up and strikes a football, now if they run up to the ball and strike through the ball, but the ball doesn't come off the floor, for argument's sake, and you want it to come off the floor, you have to look at at what part of that continuum did they fail? What part of that continuum was unsuccessful? So a lot of the times what people will do is they'll coach the run up, they'll coach the bent knee, they'll coach the arm going out. They won't understand, well, that player can do that already. So we don't really need to hone in on that. What we need to hone in is maybe where they're striking the ball, where their foot is, are they leaning back, are they leaning forward? So that's only approximately you coach them from where they are. So you don't coach the stuff that they can do already unless they're failing at it. You take them to where they are, and then you take them to another part of their comfort zone. You take them out there, so you're coaching them outside their comfort zone. But most of the time, what people do is they start with the thing that they can't do, rather than starting with the thing that they can do. So a lot of the times, what people don't understand as well is when you repeat something that you can't do, if you allow the circuit to complete, that will become a habit that you can't, that now your body doesn't know whether it's a good or bad habit. So what happens is it's important that you understand where the breakdown is in their technique or in their learning, and you coach it from there. Now, sometimes people will coach the whole thing, or what they'll do is they won't understand that people don't understand exactly where to coach from. So people crossing the ball over the bar, they won't understand that they got the run up right, they got the timing right. All they did wasn't strike the ball. So you can break the session down into four yards and work on. We call it taking it to the lab. So what part of the technique do you take back to the lab? And it could be they're getting the run up wrong. It could be that they're not bending their knee. It could be that. So as they run up and they strike it wrong, it could be that their leg's too straight. It could be a host of things. So where do you coach that person from? And that's zone of proximal development. It's what part of your learning needs to be accelerated. And a lot of the times, I think that's where we start with the player.
Yeah, as I said, those are good points you've been making, because I think as coaches, oftentimes we don't follow that process. And a zone of proximal development, it might sound like something scientific, but it is the way you explain it. It is just following a process, and analyzing what's needed by the players in that true sense. I'm going to go to another one. I will go back to back.
Can I just qualify that as well?
Yes, please.
When people talk about if somebody's, I'm going to say something like a cross. You're a fullback and you're crossing the ball and it's going over the bar or whatever. Yes. People will criticize you for that. And when you're looking at a kid, there's also people don't understand. They got the first pass right. They got the timing of the run right. They got to the right place. The only thing that they didn't get right was the swing of the leg. So you have latent learning. So the more you practice that, the better that people are forgetting that they're getting better at the first pass. They're getting better at the timing of the overlap. They're getting stronger in doing that. So you have latent learning where people don't realize that is just as important as where the zone of proximal development is.
Right. Good information there, Chris. And I think I spoke to you about this already. There's a follow-up with another statement I heard from you. Let's call it a statement. Credible flexibility. That's another one I want you to explain to me.
On my presentations, sometimes because I do some presentations for different FAs, because I'm probably one of the only people that have worked in every job in a football club. There's not many people that have every job. And what it is if you look at two team photos at the beginning of the season. So you see me in one where I'll be with the under 15s or 16s or whatever it is, and you see me in another one with the first team. Now, what happens is a lot of the times people that work with first team players think that it's easy to just go and coach young players, and vice versa. People that have success with youth team players think it's easy to just go and work with first team players, and they find quickly that their credibility in the other arena is actually not valid. So you need credibility. You need to be flexible, and you need to have that credibility in both camps. So credible flexibility means that you need to, wherever you go, you need to be able. If you're working with an under 9 and you're talking to an under 9, you go down one knee so that you can work with that person and they understand you're going down to their level. But similarly, if you go and work with the first team, you better be sure that you understand tactics, you understand what it takes to play first team football. So that credible flexibility, I find that it's one of the most difficult things for a coach to have, and also to be accepted by players in each team or each squad, that you can coach first team players. When you go to a first team training session, and the manager might ask you to put on a possession session or something like that, you can credibly put that on and give the points that would be accepted by those players without them looking at you as if you are an academy coach. And also when you go and work with the under 12s, you can put a session on that age related, that you can modify your expectations to understand where their players are.
All right, understand. Good. Before before we go on to, I just wanted to ask you about Les, but before we go on to that, I think in your introduction, I don't quite remember hearing you mention the head coach of England national under 20 football team. Did you mention that? I don't quite remember.
I did that as well. And I was fortunate in that, as you always are. I was Howard Wilkinson's assistant for the under 18s, and what happens is, as you know, international football, one team is an under 18s, they move on to the under 20s, and so on and so on. And Howard, at that time, I think it was his first game. England didn't have a manager at the time, and he took the game, which left the under 20s without a coach. And fortunately, I was able to take that. You know, and one of the landmarks was. At the time, we didn't even think about it. It was myself and Hope. We were the first black coaches of England teams, and when you think about it, it was only 20 odd years ago. It's incredible to think that.
Incredible, yeah. I think I say Hope Powell, who is actually of Jamaican connections. Her parents from Jamaica, but she was the first, also, wasn't she, to be the women's team coach?
Yeah, she was. She was before me, but she's a fantastic coach, by the way.
Yes.
I worked with her. I was her tutor on her full license when I was working at the FA, and she was one of the best coaches in the cohort. I think she was the only woman. So she's groundbreaking all the way around. She's groundbreaking.
Yeah, man. I spoke with her on a podcast, and she. I've met her before. I spoke to her. And she was like, what I like her about her, she's a little bit, people think she would be, I'm bragging a bit, but she's quite calm with her achievements. And I really, really look at that. I have a question here for you, Chris. I don't know. This is from George Davis. He's from Jamaica. I'm sure you can see the question. Will you take up invitees to come to Jamaica and do the clinics? We could learn so much.
Listen, I would love to. I'd love to do that. I tell you what, I'm probably doing myself out of a clinic in the sun. Paul Hall, who's one of your top players that played in the World Cup. He's one of my strongest disciples at the club. In fact, in pinning down the philosophy, that we've done, and that's why we've had so many players at QPR come through. He is a fantastic coach. I really hope for him that he gets a job with a first team, because he is outstanding. And I've worked with a lot of good coaches, but he is outstanding. So I come with Paul.
I spoke to Paul. I didn't know I spoke to Paul. I spoke to Paul, I spoke to Micah, and I spoke to Lee Hayes, 3 of your coaches within QPR. They have all fantastic things to say to you about you. But I also love the way that QPR, the pathway that QPR offers for these coaches. Because at first, when I spoke to Lee was just a part-time coming in to do certain things, not seriously up there. Then I got through to Mike, and then Micah is the foundation phase coach. Then Paul is up on the 2023s. And I'm going, this is a rarity when I talk to people from clubs to get that type of a pathway for these young coaches. And I think that it can only, I'm saying this, it can only come from someone like you who has been there, done that, and given them an opportunity. So I love that pathway. Is this a specific is this a club sort of an approach to development for coaches?
Yeah, because I'm head of coaching. Obviously, I was one of the tutors since with the FA before. So coach education is something that I've worked in extensively over the last couple of decades. But I think it's important. We have a philosophy in what we do and how we do it, and teaching new people is difficult. So sometimes when you have people under your fold, you're better off fighting to get them to learn it and respect it, than bringing new people all the time. Because what you're gonna have is you will bring in new people, but there are just certain things that we do and expectations that we have that allows me to promote people, because as soon as they start working in a certain way that I think helps and develops the players, then it's easy to promote them to the next thing. And also what we tend to do is the full-time coaches like Paul Furlong and Micah and Andy Impey, they don't have to, but they do one night a week in the academy in the evening. And what they do is they coach educate the part-time coaches. So it's a circle that keeps going. So they can listen. We've got 5 coaches at the top of the tree at our place. They played 3,000 games between them or more, and been coaching for a day. And without harping on about the facts of the minorities, no club in the country has got 5 black coaches at the top level. But a lot of people would say to me, "Oh, you give them jobs because they're black." But I'm saying, well, look at our record: 20 debuts in less than 5 years, highest, among the highest academy production minutes. So no one can actually look at that and say, well, I'm not giving quality people an opportunity, because they've proved it. They've proved it themselves.
Yes, and I want to come to that later. Definitely, I want to have a long conversation about that later, because I think it's something that is current and needs to be discussed in a bit. You are in your coaching, because I have another question here, but let me say to first of all, let me just welcome my viewers. Anyone, if you're just joining us, I'm talking to no other than Chris Ramsey, the head of coaching and technical director for Queen's Park Rangers Football Club out of the UK. Yes, the Queen's Park Rangers Football Club. And I tell you, we're not talking about the senior team now. We're talking about development through the entire Queen's Park system, from coaches to player development. We are speaking to Chris, who has already had a decade in Tottenham, and you should know the type of players that are coming out of Tottenham at that time too, and presently. So I'm sure that Chris left a legacy there, and in that stint, you actually was working along with Les Ferdinand, and you see, you did such a good job, and I'm beating your drum for you. You did such a good job there that when Les went to QPR, he reached out for you and brought you there, right? So give me a little bit of that. Just give me a little bit of your relationship with Les. Okay, I know you have a lot of respect for him.
Well, Les, I initially met Les when I worked at the FA years ago when they were talking about individual mentoring of professionals that were coming to the end of their career. And nothing really came of it with the FA. And then I met him again when he came back when he came to QPR, and he was working with Harry Redknapp with Sherwood in the first team. And he showed enthusiasm to pass his badges and stuff like that, and still having my tutor status when I was at Tottenham. I sort of mentored him and Tim Sherwood through their badges, so they could get their A licenses, and really from their B license to A license to pro license. So and he's a very, very good coach. I mean, when you look at people like Harry Kane and the other forwards that are in and around Tottenham, he did some very good work with those players, which goes sort of mentioned, really. His name doesn't really get mentioned when people talk about how good some of these players are. And but he always had the thought that he would not want to be sort of like a headline coach, and he'd rather go upstairs and work as a sporting director, which is what he's doing now. So his dream came true when QPR asked him to do that job, and obviously he's a legend. QPR probably their best ever player. And then he asked me to come because they hadn't had a player in the first team from the youth setup since 1996. So at that stage, they'd overspent a lot with the budget, and they were just looking to see if we could replicate what we had done at Tottenham at QPR.
Okay. In your academy, in the academy, Chris, is there any importance, because this has been going around and you hear it in different coaching circles and even in academies, is there any importance paid to RAE, relative age effect? You paying attention to that at all in your academy? The relative age effect that we hear these people talking about?
No, we like I said before, we work on strength-based capability. So wherever you are is where you play if you're capable.
Oh,
it's
okay.
The end of it. So if you're an under 14 and you can play in the under 16s, then you play in the under 16s.
Oh, okay.
But similarly, if you're an under 16 but you're under match rated, you'll play in the under 15s.
Okay.
So we don't really look at that. We look at what you're capable of doing, and whatever you're capable of doing that's what you do.
Yeah.
So we don't really care. We don't really care about anything other than that. So technique is the most important for us, and then whatever your strengths are and your capabilities is where you play.
And the other area, because I know they do have competitions now like that in the UK and other areas of the world and other MAs in the world, and that's biobanding. That's the opposite of it. It's biobanding. What is your take on that? Give me your take on biobanding. What do you think about the whole process?
No, we do that. We do that with some of the clubs. We do it. The only drawback to biobanding at times is you can't bioband the emotional part of it.
Right.
So we've got a kid who's an under 14 and he has to play in the under 12s because he's that under match rated physically. But when he goes into playing with the under 12s, the game, emotionally, he's too far ahead of the players that are in the game. So you can't bioband the game. You can only really bioband it physically. But there's different ways of biobanding. You can bioband technically as well. Not bioband, but you can ban technically as well. So I agree with it. I do agree with it. Because a lot of players are lost to physical underdevelopment. They're lost to that. They get overlooked. But that's the only drawback that I would say. Sometimes the emotional side of it, you can have a kid who's very small in physique but very mature emotionally, and vice versa. So,
and
so
that's
I do
true.
agree with it.
Yeah, I tend to agree with it also, because I've seen it in the national programs in the country. When in Jamaica, really, I was even here in US Virgin Islands. There's a young kid here that Chris, he'll talk to you. He'll get back at you. He's about 5, maybe about 5'2", but he'll take on the 6-foot players and one. So sometimes I have to say to him, you have to pick your fights. He doesn't care.
Exactly.
He has to pick his fights, but he doesn't care about that. He doesn't see them as a 6-footer. He sees them as a player. And the attitude is of such. If he was playing with the kids his age and size, he'd be a killer. And they ask, why don't you? But sometimes you try to take them on, the bigger kids 1v1, and they say, "What?" I said, "No, I'm not stopping him. If I stop him, how is he gonna get to that level? You know, he has to have a challenge."
Exactly, and he has to fail to get better.
Exactly.
You know, sometimes that failure helps you to get better. It's just how we conceptualize what is failure. You know,
yes,
that's it. You know,
that's true. I have another question from a friend of mine. He's actually in the UK. Everton Edwards, what has been the key to your success and longevity in today's game? That's a very good question.
Versatility. Versatility, because what I say to a lot of the young coaches is, unless you are versatile, because a chunk of my career I've been the number 2 a lot of times. You're number 2 because people can trust you. And they can trust that you're going to comply to what they do. So versatility is very important. So, for argument's sake, if you're a teacher and you work at a university and you get the sack and you've got a teaching degree, if you're versatile, you can go and work in a primary school. But if you're not versatile, you can only teach one level of client, student, person, player, whatever it may be. You won't have longevity. And also, you got to remember that having your own philosophy doesn't mean that you're versatile. It just means that this is what you believe in. So a lot of the times I went to work with John Steele at Barnet, and our styles of play are completely on the opposite end of the spectrum. But teaching is teaching. So if you're able to teach, you're able to teach what someone else wants you to do. And that versatility keeps you in the game. Sometimes people think, "Oh, I've got my philosophy and I'm going to do this and I'm going to do that." And then they don't move on, because unless you're in charge, you can't set the program. So I think versatility is the most important thing.
And thanks for your question, Everton. And that leads me to a conversation I think we had about you were at a level. I'm not going to say, I don't remember exactly what level you were at that time, but say, for instance, you were, the coach at under 20, and you were asked to coach, I think, under 9s or under 10s, and you were at the time a little bit, you were affected by just a little, and then you decided, hey, I'm going to take this job. And I respected you when you told me that, because a lot of people say, no, I'm too big for that job, I'm this level now. But I think you said it made you realize and made you a better person and a coach at the time. I don't know if you can recall the conversation we were having, but I think that's You can just mention that for me so my listeners my viewers can hear it and see what you're talking about.
I think versatility is important as regards. So, for argument's sake, I've been in situations where, look, for argument's sake, the day before I took over the first team at QPR, I was working with the under 10s. So, and then I would take the first team and still work with the under 10s. So to me, it's about having that humbleness to be able to do that and realize that your agility in your communication is very important. So it's really important that you don't look at things. Listen, some people might not be suited to do that. Now we know that some people only want to work with seniors, but the game has a lot of competitors, and if you're not versatile to work with different people, you won't stay in the game very long. Because If in England, there's only 92 jobs for the first team. There's only 92 jobs. There's only 92 under 21 jobs, 92 under 20 B team jobs, or under 16 jobs. So there's not a lot of jobs out there, and you need to be able to fit in where you can with the same flexible credibility we were talking about before.
Yes. Well, I know that answers Everton's question. Definitely. There's another area we were talking about, and we said, and we're gonna segue into that right away. But I want to start off by saying, how fortunate you think you are as a black coach to be where you are now? Is it fortunate or luck?
Yeah. No, I'm fortunate as someone in football because I've my 43rd season. But as a black coach, it depends. If you look at the statistics, you look at the landscape, and where I've worked and what I've the vast range of things that I've embarked upon in football. I think, of course, I'm happy to do that. But there are other coaches that I think done similar or could have been in similar situations that haven't been given opportunity for obvious reasons. And a lot of people say to me, "Well, you've been lucky because you worked at Tottenham, worked at QPR, and done other things." But on the other hand, probably where would I be had I been not a black coach? Might have been, might have been a lot different and a lot higher.
It brings me to this, but I've been reading recently, and I saw where even I think what's his name had a role in it. His name will come back to me, but just segue into that right now. This is what I saw. I didn't even realize that there was such a name, right? Black, Asian, and minority ethnic. And I think this came about, Chris, and I know you're very familiar with it, and I want you to expound on it. But this leads from saying, give us the opportunity, give these people the opportunity. And I know I read some place where you gave a definite take on it, your own position on this as a back coach. And that's why I lit off with being fortunate or lucky. So we had that discussion, and I want you to really qualify that lucky and fortunate. You did a while ago, but there is something else to it if we go into this, what we call BAME, Black, Asian, and minority ethnic. Tell me what this is all about, Chris.
Well, first and foremost, this is the word that there's been brought up by the authorities, and to be honest, in my opinion, it's throwing every minority into the same pot. It's not taking into consideration that each minority has its own problems and its own difficulties to get over the hurdles. They're saying that black people, Asian people have the same problems. No, we have problems. We understand that there's a common problem of discrimination, but they're individualized culturally, and the minorities and in England we have probably the most ethnically mixed country in the world, one of the most, especially in London. But BAME basically means that one solution will fit so many different nationalities and minorities. I can't see how they can fix it with one word. And I think until that is really dissected, I don't think that we'll be able to get around the individual problems of each minority. We were saying before about a lot of times, and we all do it, and my parents and people that I spoke to, we always say, listen, if we know we're going for a job as a black person, we have to be better than the white person. We have to be better than other people. But I'm having a different take on that now. You want to be good within yourself, of course you do. But why do we need to be better? There are a lot of people who are not very good from different cultures. There's a lot of people that are not very good. So we know that there are a lot of white managers that get sacked that have failed. And listen, we know it's hard in football anyway. So I'm not saying that it's just because they fail. But I'm saying, why shouldn't I be allowed to fail and also get another job? Why should me as a black coach affect every other black coach? So if I fail, why should Paul Hall not get a job?
Right.
So until we get to the point where where society stops to say that we need to be better, we will always be setting ourselves up to fail. Because what you're doing is you're saying, if a white coach is a 7 out of 10, why do I need to be a 9 out of 10 to be considered the same?
Right.
Why can't I just be 7?
7, yeah.
Why can't I just be 7 and they just pick the best man at the time? Or if someone's 5 out of 10 and getting the job, why can't I be 5 out of 10 and get the job?
Yes.
So
I'm right there. I'm right there with you.
We as a community need to get away from saying we need not that we know deep down it's true. We do know it's true. So I'm not naive enough to think it's not true. But until the narrative amongst our culture and in all jobs, I would say, gets away from the black person needs to be better than the white person to get a job, we'll struggle to succeed, because to be a 9 out of 10 consistently is not sustainable. So you're setting yourself up to fail straight away. So if you're 9 out of 10 for, 5 weeks, and then you drop to a 7, you're failing, aren't you? You're failing. 7 is still good. 7 is still good, isn't it?
Yes.
But you're failing because your expectations is that you have to be a 9 out of 10.
Yes.
So to me, we've got to know. Let's actually be the same and get the same treatment. Now, you know that until that happens, we're going to be struggling, because the expectations are going to be unsustainably high, and we can all put our fists up and say, yeah, we're black people and we fight and we do this and we do that. No, but we're human beings as well. Firstly, that's what we are. And human beings can only sustain a certain level for a certain amount of time.
Right.
So that's my sort of take on the way that people look at things and the way that the authorities look at things. I just don't see it.
I don't know if you were the one that plays a little pressure by calling out Raheem Sterling and people like Rashford to make a statement about this, because I saw where Sterling came out, I think maybe last year or the year before, I think last year, and spoke out about the opportunities for black people at the higher level, coaching level, the administrative level. I think one statement he made that he wants to know if he goes into the office, to the FA, and has some complaints, he can have somebody who looks like him that he can complain to. You know, I think maybe you pressured him here, Chris.
No, I mean, it wasn't me, but I think I had made some statements before. I mean, I wasn't directing it totally at anybody. I mean, basically what I was saying is that unless you have economic value, people don't listen. So if you're a top player, a top person that everybody listens to in the mainstream society, then you have a chance of using your platform, which those two players particularly have used their platform in a very positive way to help people. But you know, I wouldn't claim that I pressurized them to do it, but I have made comments in the paper basically saying that economic value allows you to open the eyes of other people. And I'm glad, because I think you know, we have a black players coalition at the moment, which was Michael Johnson, who's, you know, very, very articulate. He was the manager of Ghana, you know, but obviously a top player as well. He leads. He's one of the leaders on it, and you know, when you look at people trying to get people together, you know, in order to cause a shift, it's important, because for me, myself and Mike started talking about it before. I sent him loads of articles from 20 years ago when I was first having these arguments years and years ago, like when Ricky Hill helped to introduce the Rooney Rule and stuff like that. And he couldn't believe it because a lot of the articles I'd sent him, he could have been written last week.
Yeah, same thing.
The people are saying the same thing.
The
same thing. So I was saying to him, what unfortunately for you 40-something-year-olds, when I was arguing, I sent him an article and I said, look, when this first article came out, I was 41. Now you're 59.
Yes.
So I'm saying to them, don't be me. Now, fortunately, me, as Chris Ramsey, been in the game 43 years, so I'm fortunate. But there's lots of people who, from my era, that are not in the game because because the same things that are being said now were being said 20 years ago. So every so often I send people out a little bit of history, and they read the article, and they'll say, "Well, when was that? When was that? Last week? No, it was done in 2001, say for argument's sake." So what we don't want is another smokescreen for 20 years.
Exactly.
And people who are now in the 40-somethings will be saying to the 40-somethings in 2040 that this is what we said 20 years ago. And it's, if you think about it, in England, senior coaches, I don't think there's Chris Hughton who's 60, there's me 59, Jerry Connor 57, and I think Keith Curl will be 56. Apart from that, there are not many coaches over 55.
In the top. Yeah.
At all. I mean, I'm not talking about there's people to choose from. I've literally named the 5.
Right.
There might be 1 or 2 more that I've not I've missed out. But it's not like 30 or 40.
No significant amount.
5 or 6.
As they would say, you can count them on one hand.
But literally, I can't name off the top of my head another senior coach who's over 55 who's from a minority in England.
All right. Before I forget, I hear you have mentioned Ricky Hill, a good friend of yours. I almost landed in my job in Grenada. He was probably like 2 weeks away from getting the job in Grenada as a head coach when I was a technical director there. Yeah. Then last minute the president switched and brought in this other coach. But Ricky and I was in contact for a while, just trying to get him the job. He almost landed it. No, I want to go right back in this. I don't know. I mean, I don't think you mind us spending some time in this area because it's really critical, I think, for coaches for people to understand what's happening there. And I don't like quotas. I think you and I spoke about it. I don't like quotas. Why should I be a quota? If I'm good, why should I just be a quota? And they came up with this rule, the Rooney Rule. And for my viewers, this Rooney doesn't have anything to do with Wayne Rooney. It's an administrator within the FA, I think. So it's a Rooney Rule. And tell us what this rule is about, Chris.
Well, what it was it's not actually the Rooney Rule. It's getting a version of the Rooney Rule that should suit. And what happened was in America, there was a guy that realised that there was hardly any black coaches involved in the American football, and he put a rule together. Well, he offered a rule that would say that they would have to interview a black coach or a minority coach within their interview process. So that was at least just to get the door open, so that at least people could go and show what they could do, and at least be in the interview process. Now, what happened was Ricky Hill, who used to work for, used to be the head coach at Tampa Bay Rowdies. He lived in America for a period of time because he couldn't get in England. He introduced that to the English system. He introduced it to the PFA. Myself and him talked to John Barnwell, who was in charge at the time of the LNA, and then Ricky took it on. Now, it wasn't a case of it being in this situation a quota. This was a case of if when you are interviewing people, you have to be mindful that there are not only white coaches, there are coaches from different backgrounds. So it's making sure that people were aware that they're missing out on a lot of people that have played the game who are qualified. And this may be institutionalized or it may be personal. But one way or another, black coaches were not getting interviews in the same way as white coaches. Now, what the problem has been is that because people haven't budged, people have had to take drastic action in regards trying to set up quotas and awareness of the fact that people are not doing what they're promised to do. However, there has been in some situations you have inverted commas do-gooders who don't actually understand the plight, and they come out with things like, well, let's have a quota of this and a quota of that, where people then find it easier to tick boxes than actually do it with the right ethics. So there's been a lot of box ticking where people are saying, right, we've had our token black interviewee, and now we can move on to what's really in our hearts. So the quota system is become very, very blurred. In some respects, it is correct. In other respects, we know that people are using it to tick boxes, to be seen to be doing the right thing. And one of the things that I probably have not been quiet about is when they have things like people like setting up special observational roles and stuff like that, where it's not actually a role. You know, some of the things that people have set up, I wouldn't say do more damage, but some of the times it's in a way that you're saying, well, hold on a minute, the white coach just needs a full badge and an interview. I need to do these 10 other things plus the interview to get in. Now it's hard enough to get in anyway. As white, black, brown, it's hard enough to get a job in football. But why should I also need these other qualifications to get an interview? Why should I? Why? And so it's me going back to saying, why do I have to be better in order to get the same? Why?
Good question. You know, so and it comes in, Chris, because they seem to come up with these things to sort of pigeonhole black, brown, and Asian, or whatever kind. I think you were saying to me that, and I before when we spoke, we can't look at the black people's needs as the Asian needs, different culture, different needs, different things. And I think that when they box you into that, and they came up with this other one that I want to put on the screen too also, the Equality Action Plan, which is similar to this Rooney thing, where you're saying, okay, you must do this, you must do that for this amount of players and coaches and things. And I think it's so, I'm on the same line as you. It's almost as if to say, okay, you're a 7, as you say, you're a 7 out of 10, I'm a 7 out of 10, but I'm not getting the same opportunity. And I can go even further. You might be a 7 and I might be a 9 or 8, but I'm not getting that opportunity, you know. And before I let you weigh in on that, I'll put a scenario there that Raheem Sterling came up with, right? About these two, Frank Lampard and Steven Gerrard. And he juxtaposed that with Sol Campbell and Andy Cole. Same pro license development, but the two Lampard and Steven Gerrard got a job when they are still struggling to find a top job. You know, so weighing on that for me, Chris.
Well, sorry, excuse me, I've just my battery's going low.
Okay, so you want to plug it up.
He's correct.
Yes,
that's an obvious comparison. So if you look at it and you say, right, I'm not saying that they shouldn't get the job. I'm not saying that
Right.
Lampard and Gerrard. I'm not saying that. All I'm saying is they're professional players and they've been accelerated because of their career. They've been accelerated. Fair play. Clap, clap, clap. Right. Sol Campbell has had the same career. The same. So why isn't he being headhunted? So a lot of times what people do is they hide behind the fact of, well, hold on a minute, this player, he's been a top player and this and that and the other. And I'm saying, I'm not saying they shouldn't get the job. Give them the job. But also recognise that they didn't play in their teams on their own. There was other people in their teams, black players in their teams. And why shouldn't they get the same opportunity as them? So there's a lot of defensiveness about it when people say, well, I've worked and I've got my badge. I'm not saying they shouldn't have it. I'm just saying that everybody given the same career should be given the opportunity. And
that when he pointed that out, I thought it was very prudent at the time to really do that, because it comes in. He was following up on something that you said, not necessarily following what you said, but I'm just referring to what you said about this BAME, the black Asian, and then he was saying that there wasn't many opportunities, and it leads me into this, Chris. This is running current now, where we are having the people taking a knee and having all kinds of signs with the racism in the game. Let me start off with this first question before you go on to what your thoughts are. Back when you were playing, did you face any sort of racism in the game? That's bring a smile to your face. Okay.
I told you I started in 1978. So you can imagine what it was like. You can imagine what it was like in society. Far less. I mean, it wasn't even. I mean, people could call you what they liked. They could just call you what they liked. Whole sections of fans could sing whatever they liked. There wasn't even a mention of it. So I mean, all sorts of racism from the terraces, all sorts of racism in the changing room, all sorts of racism at training. It was just part of the course, just normal, normal. So. If you look back in the 70s, I mean, what chance did you have there? And you had no voice. Plenty of fights, but no voice.
Yeah. So, and after all those years now, we have come up against it. And I don't think it has ever left. I just think it was more controlled. That's my view. I don't think it has ever left the game. I just think players understood the ramifications, they understood what might take place if they behave a certain way. But now it has filtered in more into fans in certain places. What is your take now on that and racism? Just overall, no, not back when you were overall.
100%. I agree with you. It's never left the game. And I think people can hide now behind social media. They can hide behind that easier than ever before. But obviously, I think recently it's almost become a trendy thing to freedom of speech, where people believe they can say what they want and act in the ways that they do. Now, obviously, the punishments for these people that come out with racist comments could be a lot sterner and a lot harsher, as we all know. But having said that, there are initiatives which there weren't before. The problem is how slow the initiatives are in everything that we do regarding equality, regarding how we're going to stamp it out. And that's where I think that a lot of black people, a lot of Asian people, a lot of minorities have got their anger from how long things take to happen, and also the lack of punishment that goes on as well.
I agree with you. I think George wants to ask you a question. George posed a question, which I think is you have probably covered before, but out of respect, I'm going to pose a question to you, and you because It's a little long. It says, with the number of black players participating in the English game, do you believe their career in coaching is being guided? And if so, what is the best pathway?
Well, to be honest, Paul Davis and Ife Onura and Dave Regis, people like that have done a lot of work to help make sure that the black coaches do get qualified and have got a chance in the game. And then, I mean, there are a lot of other people, Simone Pound at the PFA as well. She's been in it. And there's a lot of people that have helped to get a lot of black coaches qualified. I mean, believe it or not, people used to say before about black coaches not getting jobs. They say, oh, they haven't got their qualifications. Well, there are 1,000 minority coaches now. So there are a lot of coaches around now who've got their qualifications. Now, as regards getting their careers guided, I talked about Iffy before. He's put together some initiatives which allows coaches to actually at least have some sort of employment at football clubs. Now, whether these initiatives work in the long run will remain to be seen. But obviously, in 2 years' time, we'll see. We'll see if the clubs actually do employ the people that the initiatives are for. But as far as their careers being guided, that's the best we can do.
Okay.
And also the best we can do is make sure that the authorities keep to their word, because there's a voluntary code out there now. The voluntary code, which I believe should be mandatory, but obviously legislation will say that it's not allowed to be mandatory.
You're saying, Chris, while you're at Brighton and did coaching come into your own personal development? And when did you first gain your FA coaching qualification? He's digging into your past.
When I was at Brighton, no, I didn't really coaching. I did do my first badge at Brighton when I was 21, and then I didn't coach again until I was 28. And I only started coaching really out of the necessity, not because I really wanted to be a coach. I couldn't see myself being a coach, if I'm being honest. But that's where I am.
All right. So, Chris, I know we are coming to the end now. But, as I said to you before, I like to do a little reflection. Just leave my coaches and viewers. When we're approaching coach development, what are some of the areas that we should pay attention to? You did already. I just want to finish up with that. What are some of the areas where you're looking at developing young players?
I think first of all, you have to look at if you don't get the emotional side right to start with, you're not going to develop a player. I think first of all, realize why you signed that player or what that player brings, and try and make them have super strengths. And also, just think of it as school, how you develop, how you become rounded at school. So you have to be very rounded at the beginning, and then you start honing in on your characteristics and your specialities. So the main thing I look at that, and it depends what you want. You also got to realize when you're coaching, what do you and the players want out of the season and the session. So where are you heading to? You know what I mean? It's because a lot of the times people think, right, we're going to put a good team together and we're going to win. And that's what everybody's bought into. Then you're not that worried about the individual development. Right. If you're looking at making players better for a national team or to make them become professionals, then a lot of the team stuff, I wouldn't say it's not relevant, because the team helps the player to flourish. But you have to the team versus individual development, and where does that sit? That's where I would look at. Where does that sit? Team versus individual development. Yeah.
I am right up there with you, Chris, because I coach Premier League in Jamaica, and I said to my players, if you're playing to let us win as a club, then forget it. I want you to play to make the national team. That's what I said to him. We can win, but my job is to get you into the national program.
Exactly.
So I'm right up there with you.
Exactly.
Right.
And to be honest with you, what people don't realise, unless you're working in first team football,
yes,
you're a developer. That's what you are.
Exactly.
You're a developer. Everyone working outside the first team is a developer.
I'm going to finish with Everton Edwards, and then we're done. He's a compliment, and I love the compliment. He has always enjoyed your sessions because your adaptability and graciousness. Because of your adaptability and graciousness, he has always had that flexibility. You have always had that flexibility, and he admired watching your sessions.
Thank you.
And that, as I said, Everton is in the UK. Everton also coached in the US. He was the head coach of Florida International University women's team.
Yeah.
And he went back to UK, so he's actually there with his own company now. You know.
Yeah, no, I know. So, Everton's been on the scene a long time. Don't worry about that.
Yes. Well, Chris, I tell you, I know all my viewers would go on will listen all day to you speak. I love having you on. It was a pleasure having you on. I thank you wholeheartedly for coming on and sharing your experience from a player, from a coach going at an early age. We have coaches, like you say, you got your first badge at 21, but you never started coaching really until 28. So why that happened, I don't know. We can't get into that now, but maybe it's a personal reason. But thank you for coming on. And hopefully one day I can speak to you again in a different on a different level, where we got a different level of coaching and development. All right. So it was my pleasure, Chris.
I have to say, it's an honor to be asked to come on, and whatever happens, if we can help each other, then just reach out whenever you're around, or if you need to. But it's been an honor to be on the show. Thank you.
Right. Thanks again for having me on. So viewers, thanks for joining us today. We were speaking to none other than Chris Ramsey. Is not somebody we have to do any introduction about. You can always do that. You can always look at that. But before, Chris, I forget one thing. I'm going to put something back on the screen. I forget one thing. I want you to talk to me about that thing in your hand, right? Just give me what that is all about, Chris.
It's an MBE which I received from the Queen's list to November 19. Great honour for myself and my family. It was in recognition for my services to football and diversity in sport, because as you know, I've had a lot run-ins regarding dealing with issues in diversity in sport, and obviously the football thing was, I've been in it over 40 years, worked in every division at every level with every age group, and had every job that there is in a football club to have, as well as being an agent and a physio and a sports scientist. So it was a recognition for quite a few different things that I've achieved in football. And also, one of the good things about it goes to show that journeymen sometimes can succeed.
Yes. I almost forgot that, Chris, and that's one of those honors that I think should be dearly kept to your heart. It is a great honor, and I congratulate you for the work you have been doing. I congratulate you for how you strive to help others by just simply saying what you need, needed to be said to help other Black coaches coming up and coaches overall. All right, so thanks for coming on. So viewers, that's it. I should just make a little retraction there to make sure I put that in for Chris. Not that he asked me to, guys. Please, he never asked me to. I did that because I think it's an honor to have been awarded that type of a medal. All right, so join us again next time when we have another interesting show for you with another interesting guest. We'll try to top Chris. I don't think we can right away, but hopefully we can. So Chris, once again, thanks again for coming on.